I was born in Texas because the hospital was in Texas, but my parents' home and our family and my entire heritage is Louisiana, so they just had to go to the hospital across the state line. My hometown is 5 miles on the Louisiana side, and the hospital is 5 miles on the Texas side. So
Okay.
I moved before before I could move. Well, my grandmother played piano and my aunt played piano, and we had a piano in our house and one at my grandmother's, and it seemed to me that everywhere that you went, a home of substance or a family home, a lot of them had pianos. It was kind of a little before television became the center of the universe in every family's home, and so we gathered around the piano in my family. We gathered for Sunday dinner, and then we'd sit around the living room and talk, and somebody would play the piano. And that's what growing up in that kind of musical family meant. I didn't have an intention with that. I just was the next one in line in this family to take piano lessons and to be able to play. I didn't think it would lead to anything, really. That was not even an idea. But I was about 14 when my aunt, who played the piano, brought a friend of hers to visit, and the friend was a folk singer. And I hadn't heard any folk music at that point in my life, not a lick of Peter, Paul, and Mary or anything. And so this woman came in and sang Puff the Magic Dragon, and I immediately said, I have to have a guitar now. So it took a while to talk him into it, but I got my guitar, but I didn't sing at all until I got to college. I think that's a result of how I started out, the things that I was trying to play when I was 5 years old and a child that I heard my grandmother and my aunt play were stride and boogie woogie, trying to make my hands reach that octave so I could walk that bass, and I've just always been very concentrated on the bass and the left hand, and then so what ultimately has lagged behind is my jazz chops, my right hand chops, yeah.
Were your parents supportive, or was that a pretty traumatic time?
They fretted the whole time, probably for about the first 20 years of my career, I guess, 15 or 20 years. And they were supportive at the same time. Even back in the days when I was in Baton Rouge and playing rock and roll, and they were weighing whether they could come and pick me up and force me to go back to Vinton and go back home and go back to school, and they didn't ultimately. And so it was always on the table in front of us that they prefer that I go to school and get a job they didn't say not play music. That was the thing. It wasn't that they wanted me to not play music, because that part of the country, a lot of people play music. They just do other things too. And yet I think my parents also knew enough people who played music for a living too, and managed to do that. But I got married. I was just barely 20, and I kind of diffused the whole conversation about whether I was going to come home by getting married, and actually I did that twice. I got away with that twice. They were still worried about me in my 30s when I wasn't married to my first husband anymore. And then when I got married the second time, it was again like they were going, it's like you're not alone. You've got a safety net under you, which I guess I did in a real way. They love to dance. They danced their entire marriage and fished. And when I lived in Austin and I first got in that country band, and our first gig in Houston that we played, which is closer to home, to Vinton, we played with Townes Van Zandt. We played 2 nights with Townes Van Zandt at Liberty Hall in Houston. And I think it was the second night, the Saturday night, I was singing Help Me Make It Through the Night, and I looked up and my parents danced past me on the dance floor. And I thought, okay. But even with the psychedelic rock and roll band, you know, on one hand my mother's saying, you know, straighten up, come home, and on the other hand she's sewing me these crazy gig clothes to wear.